is a hum, not music, not a chant, not something created for performance or ritual. It is a signal, precise, repeatable, biological. A signal encoded into breath more than 3,000 years ago by practitioners who had no instruments, no imaging technology, no neuroscience, and yet understood exactly what it was doing to the human brain. Today, we have those instruments, and what they show is not vague. It is measurable. After the age of 40, the human brain begins to lose approximately 5% of its volume every decade. This is not a theory. It is observed through imaging. The hippocampus, the structure responsible for memory formation and spatial awareness, begins to shrink steadily, with measurable decline accelerating after the age of 50. Names become harder to recall, details slip, orientation weakens, not suddenly, gradually. At the same time, amyloid beta protein, the molecular marker associated with Alzheimer's disease, begins accumulating in the brain years, often decades before any visible symptom appears. Long before diagnosis, long before concern, the process is already underway. And then there is the glymphatic system, the brain's internal cleaning mechanism. Identified by modern science only in 2013, this system is responsible for clearing metabolic waste from neural tissue, including amyloid beta. With age, its efficiency declines by up to 40%. The waste remains. It accumulates. The consequence is not immediate. It builds slowly. Neural tissue degrades. Signal transmission weakens. Cognitive aging accelerates, not because decline is unavoidable, but because the conditions required for maintenance are no longer being met. What follows is not motivational, it is mechanical. Before 2013, neuroscientists faced a problem. The brain produces significant amounts of waste, yet no clear system existed to explain how that waste was removed. Then researchers at the University of Rochester identified a network of microscopic channels surrounding the brain's blood vessels. These channels, driven by cerebrospinal fluid, actively flush toxins from the brain. This system, now called the glymphatic system, has a critical requirement. It functions most efficiently only under specific physiological conditions: low heart rate, slow breathing, and dominance of the parasympathetic nervous system. In simple terms, the brain can only clean itself when the body is in a state of deep, genuine rest. Modern life rarely allows this. Chronic elevation of cortisol, the biochemical signature of ongoing stress, keeps the nervous system locked in a state of alertness. Screens before sleep, constant noise, irregular breathing patterns, inflammatory diets, all contribute to a system that never fully powers down. The result is not just fatigue, it is accumulation. Waste builds, proteins remain. The brain does not enter the state it requires to maintain itself. The issue is not age, the issue is interruption. Now consider this. For thousands of years, a specific breathing technique has existed, preserved across yogic traditions, described in ancient texts as a method for calming the mind, sharpening awareness, and extending clarity over time. This technique is known as Bhramari Pranayama, the humming breath. What ancient practitioners described as stilling the fluctuations of the mind can now be mapped with precision. When the mouth is closed and a low, steady hum is produced through the nose, the vibration travels upward through the skull. It passes through the cribriform plate, a porous structure separating the nasal cavity from the brain, and directly stimulates the olfactory bulb. At the same time, this vibration triggers a measurable increase in nitric oxide production within the paranasal sinuses. Studies have recorded increases of up to 1,500% above baseline. This is not a local effect. Nitric oxide enters the bloodstream. It expands blood vessels. It improves circulation, particularly within the brain. It creates the exact conditions required for a shift into parasympathetic dominance, the state necessary for recovery and repair. Simultaneously, the act of prolonged humming stimulates the vagus nerve, the 10th cranial nerve, and one of the most important regulatory pathways in the human body. The signal travels from the throat to the brainstem, then into deeper brain structures, including the hippocampus. And then something critical happens. The glymphatic system responds. The brain begins to clear, not because something external was added, but because the conditions were finally correct. At what age did you first notice your memory wasn't as sharp as it used to be? When did names start taking longer? When did focus begin to drift? And more importantly, did anyone ever explain that these processes are not fixed, but influenced? The mechanisms are not theoretical. They are documented. A 2012 study indexed under PMID 223074773 measured nitric oxide levels during Bhramari Pranayama and confirmed a dramatic increase in nasal nitric oxide production. The researchers were not studying ancient philosophy. They were analyzing airflow and gas exchange. Yet their findings aligned precisely with what practitioners had described through experience alone. Separate studies on vagus nerve stimulation have shown increased production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, a protein directly responsible for neurogenesis within the hippocampus. New neurons in the adult brain, stimulated through controlled breathing and resonance. Research into the glymphatic system has further demonstrated that slow, diaphragmatic breathing with extended exhalation, exactly the pattern used in Bhramari, creates the optimal conditions for its activation. The brainwave states induced by sustained humming, alpha and theta, are the same states associated with memory consolidation, neural repair, and long-term cognitive stability. This is not coincidence. The tools used to measure these effects are modern. The mechanism is not. Now the application. Practice Bhramari Pranayama either before dawn or immediately before sleep. These are the periods when the nervous system is already inclined toward parasympathetic activity and when hormonal balance, specifically melatonin and cortisol, is most favorable for glymphatic activation. Sit upright, spine vertical but relaxed, jaw unclenched, lips gently closed, teeth slightly apart. Bring your hands into Shanmukhi Mudra. Place your thumbs lightly on the cartilage of the ears, partially reducing external sound. This is not about blocking hearing, but about turning perception inward and amplifying internal vibration. Inhale slowly through the nose. On the exhale, produce a low, steady hum, not high-pitched, not forced. A deep, resonant vibration. You should feel it primarily in the nasal cavity behind the eyes at the base of the skull. If the vibration is only in the chest, lower the pitch. The correct frequency produces a subtle buzzing sensation near the cribriform plate. Duration matters. 10 minutes is the minimum threshold for a meaningful effect on the nervous system and glymphatic activation. 12 to 15 minutes is optimal. 3 repetitions will not change the system. Continuity will. Ancient practitioners emphasize duration, not intensity. Consistency, not force. After completing the practice, remain still for 2 to 3 minutes. No movement, no input. You will notice a shift. Not simple relaxation, but a transition. The nervous system entering a state most people rarely access consciously. It's maintenance mode. At this point, adding more becomes unnecessary. Stop searching for additional techniques, supplements, or optimizations that promise results already available through this single mechanism. The brain does not require more stimulation. It requires the conditions to repair itself. Bhramari is not something you add. It is something that removes interference. Specifically, the chronic state of sympathetic activation that prevents the brain from functioning as designed. 10 minutes. Closed mouth. 1 continuous hum. That is the entire intervention. Ancient systems preserved this practice in its simplest form for a reason. Complexity does not survive thousands of years. Simplicity does. Those who will apply this are not those chasing novelty. They are those who recognize when something is fundamental. The glymphatic system does not respond to intention. It responds to conditions. Create the conditions, and the biology follows. Very few people understand what this simple nasal hum does to the aging brain, the pathway, the mechanism, the evidence, the execution. Now that number has increased.